This Milan derby, it really did feel different, didn't it?
Absolutely. Electric atmosphere. And a result that's got everyone talking.
More than just the win, it felt like a statement from Milan. So let's deep dive into why this victory has sent ripples across Serie A beyond just the scoreline.
Right. We're talking tactics, key players, and yeah, those wider implications you mentioned, all on the table today.
Love it. Now, I've been all over those match reports and the tactical analyses, and one thing jumps out. Milan came prepared. This wasn't just about passion. This was a calculated performance. What surprised you most, tactically speaking?
It's the way Milan seemed to have Inter's game plan figured out, almost to a T. You could see it on the pitch. Even after those recent wins, Inter looked a bit off, you know.
You think so? They're usually so dangerous.
Oh, without a doubt. And they tried, but there's this reliance on their usual wing-based attacks.
Right, that quick movement down the flanks, those crosses into the box, it's classic Inter. So what happened? Did Milan just shut it down completely?
Exactly, like they'd studied the playbook. Those reports, they highlight how disciplined Milan's backline was, holding that defensive shape, closing down the spaces Inter thrives on. You force them into mistakes, which we haven't seen much of this season, that's when you know something's working.
So, credit to Milan. The preparation clearly paid off. But it's a two-way game, right? Good defense is one thing, but someone's got to put the ball in the back of the net. And those reports, they don't let you forget two names, Pulisic and Leao. How'd they factor into all of this?
Pulisic, now there's a player who's found another gear. Especially that first half, he was electric.
I remember that goal, the 10th minute. It was like watching a highlight reel.
And the reports weren't exaggerating. He just cut through Inter's defense. He was a constant threat, always looking to exploit that space in behind. And you got to give credit to Milan's midfield, those passes to find him, inch perfect. They knew what they were doing.
So not just individual brilliance then, but a system built to make the most of his strengths.
Spot on. And this all circles back to Milan understanding and exploiting Inter's weaknesses. They knew those fullbacks like to push high, supporting the attacks, leaves them open to the counter. And who better to capitalize than Pulisic? His speed, his movement, he was born for that kind of play.
But Milan had their attack firing on all cylinders, it seems. How about the other half of that equation, Leao? He's a game changer in his own right. Did he live up to the hype in this one?
Leao faced a different challenge this time around. Inter know he could turn the game on its head from that left wing, so they definitely took a more, let's say, cautious approach with him.
So more of a defensive focus to try and contain him.
Precisely. But even with that attention, he still had his moments, especially in that second half, when Milan really started turning up the pressure.
And speaking of pressure, the reports suggest that Inter's keeper, Jan Sommer, was practically putting on a one-man show back there.
Sommer was immense. Some of those saves, I mean, point blank, you just knew they were going in, but he pulled them off. Even the most ardent Milan fan had to tip their hat to him that night.
So even with Milan playing this smart, controlled game, Inter's experience, their individual talent, it kept them in the fight. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Milan took the win. Did Inter make any adjustments as the match unfolded, though? I mean, did they try to adapt to what Milan was throwing at them?
You know, they attempted to, you could see that, but it's like they were stuck in a rut, almost. Still pushing those attacks down the wings, even though Milan had a pretty well locked down. Seemed hesitant to deviate from the game plan, even when it wasn't clicking.
Interesting. You mentioned earlier about Inter potentially being fatigued. Do you think that played into this inability to adapt on the fly?
It's a good point, and it's certainly a factor. Their schedule's been brutal, those Champions League matches on top of Serie A. It takes a toll, both physically and mentally, you know?
Absolutely. Decision-making, that sharpness on the ball, it all suffers when you're running on fumes. So maybe a perfect storm then. Milan's tactics, Inter's fatigue, maybe a bit of stubbornness thrown in, and you get that 2-1 final score. But let's rewind a bit. How about those goals themselves? It wasn't all one-way traffic for Milan. Those reports I mentioned, they talk about Inter equalizing in that first half. What happened there?
Classic Inter when it comes down to it. Dimarco, he gets that pass from Barella, weighted perfectly, cuts inside, and boom, curls one right into the top corner. Beautiful goal. That ability to just transition from defense to attack, lightning fast, that's what they're known for.
Textbook Inter, you're right. But here's the thing. Even after they tied it up, the reports all seem to agree on one thing. That sense that Milan were still in the driver's seat. Why do you think that is?
They never panicked, not for a second. Stuck to the game plan, kept that defensive shape, and never stopped looking for that counterattack. Oh, and the midfield battle, that was crucial. Reinders especially, he was everywhere. So intelligent, so disciplined.
And that midfield dominance, that control, it ultimately paves the way for the winner, right? Talk to me about that final decisive moment.
It all comes down to a set piece. And, we've seen this before, haven't we? It's been a bit of an Achilles heel for Inter this season.
Definitely seems to be a recurring theme.
Late in the second half, free kick for Milan, just outside the box, tensions through the roof. Reinders, that man again, delivers an absolute peach of a ball, and Gabbia, the defender, rises above everyone. Header, goal, game over.
A defender, eh? Scoring the winner in a match like this, you got to wonder what's going through his mind right then.
Pure ecstasy, I'd imagine. You see it all over his face in the replays. And, tactically speaking, set piece, clearly something they'd worked on, exploited that weakness we talked about. Brilliant.
This wasn't just a win for Milan, was it? Felt like a real changing of the guard moment, snapping that 6-game losing streak against their biggest rivals. So, zoom out for us a bit. What are the implications? Where do we go from here?
Big questions for both sides coming out of this one. For Milan, well, talk about a confidence boost. They went toe-to-toe with a team many had pegged as favorites for the Scudetto and outplayed them, plain and simple. If they can bottle that, replicate it against the other big boys in Serie A, watch out.
So, a real statement of intent then. Milan's back, is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't rule it out, not at all. As for Inter, well, gotta sting, doesn't it? Exposes some cracks in the armor, those set pieces keep haunting them, and that reliance on one, maybe two, attacking patterns. Gotta mix it up. And the fatigue. Can't ignore that. They're going to have to manage those energy levels carefully if they want to compete on all fronts. Long season ahead.
It's true. That balancing act between domestic and European ambitions, it's a tightrope walk. But hey, that's what makes it so exciting, right? This Derby della Madonnina, it had it all. The tactical chess match, those moments of individual brilliance, and in the end, a result that could very well shift the balance of power in Serie A. One thing's for sure, you won't want to miss what unfolds next.